I'm back again, and I want to talk about backspin. I've already mentioned that in several of these videos, and it's one of those things that you hear, inside baseball talk dredge up all the time. The word backspin, I guess, is familiar to people who play tennis and, I don't know, golfers probably, but the idea is simply that of the airplane wing with the curvature on the top and the flat part on the bottom. This is how it was explained to me. It's how it's always explained to people. And it's a good explanation. Uh, why is the wing curved on the top? Because as force drives the plane forward, the rise in the curvature throws air pressure off the back part, and that creates a kind of a suction. And as the plane goes faster and faster, the suction eventually pulls the plane off the ground. I'm not a physicist, obviously. There is a professor by the name of Bahill, Bahill, who's recently published a book about the physics of how a baseball behaves off a bat and out of a pitcher's hand. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to buy a used copy because his asking price is a little beyond my pay grade right now. But as I say, this is really not the part of the book that when I've read excerpts, the part that I understand just sort of repeats what has been known for at least 100 years. When you hit a ball down like that at a downward angle and it's spinning, this is like the airplane wing in that the front part of the ball is sort of throwing air up, if you want to think of it that way, and the back quadrant of the sphere is there's some suction that pulls it upward. I remember reading in Ralph Kiner's book a passage where he credits Hank Greenberg with explaining backspin to him. The power hitter needs to impart backspin to the ball to get it to lift and carry. This is what, from the excerpts I read, again, I don't understand 90% of Professor Bahill's book to begin with. It looks like a bunch of formulas to me, but I have read some excerpts, and it really looks like all the rocket science is just leading up to some conclusions that even Hank Greenberg knew about. Hank takes us back into the early 30s, and I'm sure someone told Hank about it. And not only that, but I've talked in these videos before about the tobacco cards of the old timers from the 80s and 90s. They'd be just standing there very casually with the bat right above their buttons, and it looks as though there's not much they can do except swing down on the ball. Now, the image of the hitter from the 1890s is that he's a little punch and judy hitter, so of course he's swinging down on the ball, he's just going to chop it, beat it into the ground, and that would be a very accurate description of some of those guys like John McGraw and that Baltimore team that he played for that eventually moved to New York and became the Highlanders, which became the New York Yankees. But they were anything but the Bronx Bombers back in McGraw's day. That's where the Baltimore chop came from. I believe there was a guy who played for them who batted cross-handed, and there's not much that a cross-handed swing is good for except chopping the ball into the ground either. Okay, I get that. Swinging down on the ball, you're going to beat it into the ground, you're going to run as fast as you can. But this is where there's a lot of confusion, I think, that begins to set in. If you're going to chop the ball into the ground, then you're going to hit the top half of the ball as you swing down. You're actually top spinning it. You want it to dive right into the ground. Some of those hitters, I've said this before too in this series, you have Sam Thompson and Big Dan Brothers, King Kelly. Some of those guys were home run hitters that were hitting a dead ball over 400 feet. They didn't do it often, but that they would do it at all is pretty incredible. They were not top spinning the ball. They weren't trying to beat it into the ground. So obviously they were, as Greenberg, as Kiner did, they were swinging down on the ball from their position right here, but trying to hit the bottom half of the ball as they came down on it. That would make it shoot out in a low line drive. Now, why is it a low line drive? Why wouldn't it just be what they used to call a can of corn, a pop-up? I'm afraid that it often is, especially for smaller hitters, and this is smallballsuccess.com. That's what I'm dedicating this site to. I want smaller hitters to beware of just shooting the ball straight up in the air. Backspin's good if you can hit the center of the ball at a slightly downward angle. And I'm just, as I go through this trying to explain backspin, I'm kind of revisiting a lot of the other things I've talked about. The shift to the forward leg, the decisive 100% weight shift. What does that do? Well, it keeps you from chopping down too much on the ball. It actually carries the barrel of the bat in a relatively level line into the ball. So you're hitting the middle of the ball, you're coming slightly down. You're not, this is not a steep descent upon the ball. It's that slight entry into the center of the ball that makes it hop off the bat and gives you the low line drive. And that's in my book, Hitting Secrets from Baseball's Graveyard, which is really what was my inspiration for smallballsuccess.com. This is what those guys were doing. I'm utterly convinced.